Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the June meeting of Executive Board. I will start with the formalities at the top of the agenda. So first of all, just to advise everybody present in the room that this meeting is going to be webcast, and we welcome anybody that's chosen to tune in on such a lovely sunny afternoon. And then I'll move to the first item on the agenda, which is the appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents.
Thanks, Chair. To confirm, there have been no appeals received for today's meeting.
Thank you. Item 2, we don't have any exempt items on this paper. Item 3, we have no late items.
That's right, Chair.
Item 4, I'll turn to the board. Are there any declarations of interest, please? I don't see any. I'll turn to item 5, which is the minutes of the meeting held in April of this year. Is everybody satisfied with the minutes? I take it everybody is. So we'll move on to the first full paper of this executive board, which is item 6, please, Councillor Pryor.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the outcome of the statutory notice on a proposal to decommission the resource provision at Gledhow Primary School. So as previously brought to the Exec Board in March, over the last few years, the nature of SEND provision for speech and language for children with speech and language communication difficulties within Leeds has evolved. Previously, this resource was only available through a limited number of resource provisions. The NHS Speech and Language Therapy Service offer now allows children to access direct support from a speech and language therapist whilst being on the roll of their local mainstream school. Children can remain within their local community rather than being transported across the city. Currently, there's only one pupil attending this setting who's due to transition into secondary school at the end of this academic year. Therefore, no pupils will be directly affected by this change. There were no responses made during this latest notice period. I shall leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Pryor. Councillor Carter, please.
Yes, as Councillor Pryor said, this has been before us before, and we agreed in principle to this course of action. And we know, of course, that it's a static provision and underused, as has been pointed out. However, we know there's also a speech and language resource problem in the city. And we know that the NHS provide what is a good service, except it's oversubscribed. And here is the point. So are we sure we've thought as laterally as possible about providing the right provision before we take this final step? Could we have done more? Simple question, but I think an important one, and I would like to hear about that, please.
I think if there is more to be done, I think that is still best done through mainstream schools rather than through this provision in Gledhow, but I'm happy to let officers come in with further detail.
Yeah, I think there's been robust consultation with partners and with our health colleagues. And I think there's confidence that actually there will be sufficiency within these plans. And also, as Councillor Pryor has said, that actually in terms of outcomes for children, the new model, having children able to stay closer to home in mainstream provision is actually the best option. So there has been some detailed work around that, Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Julie. I'm
sure you're right in what you say about the provision being better provided as it is generally now anyway. The question really was the fact that the NHS scheme is oversubscribed, and I don't see how anything that you've said indicates very clearly that we're going to improve the situation, and I would like some sort of report back, therefore, at some stage as to exactly what progress has been made.
I can certainly work with health colleagues to provide more information around that, Councillor Carter.
Thank you. I will turn then, I don't know, somebody else indicating to speak. I will turn to the recommendations on page 19, and I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. Yes, yeah, given the comments made, Councillor Carter, thank you. We'll move on to item 7, please, Councillor Pryor.
Thank you. So this is the new discretionary business rate relief scheme. The report details a proposed new discretionary business rates relief policy that better reflects the city's stated ambitions in the Leeds Economic Recovery Framework 2020 and the Leeds Inclusive Growth Strategy 18 to 23. The proposed scheme value remains capped at a total value of 1.75 of local discounts to businesses against their non-domestic rates bills. This will cost the council £875,000 based on 50% retention. Support will be targeted at low social enterprises, businesses that are in their first 3 years of trading, and businesses which have a social or civic purpose that delivers wider benefits to local people and communities. Reduced expenditure on rates will, it is hoped, give recipients more scope for investing in innovation, research and development, while crucially helping them retain and create the kind of high quality employment opportunities that underpin the council's ambitions around inclusive growth. Businesses chosen for assistance will be expected to sign a corporate and social responsibility pledge that will see them committing to actions such as hosting community-based activities or improving the skills and employability of young people in education. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carter, please.
So basically we're capping it at what we've got from the government, 1.75 million over 3 years, yeah?
So hello everybody, I'm Eve Roothouse, Chief Officer of Culture and Economy. That cap is a figure that was set by the council previously in relation to the previous discretionary rates relief scheme, so it's carried over from the previous scheme.
Thank you. Councillor Galton, please.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to highlight some anomalies that people might not be aware of, because obviously this is a progressive scheme where we want to encourage entrepreneurs to not have overheads which stop them modelling their business in a socially constructive fashion. So it's enabling. But one of the things that we've noticed as local councillors in my area, for instance, is that actually the council charges itself business rates on buildings such as community centres. And if any building was going to demonstrate, social value and provide good value to the taxpayer as affordable venues to have activities in for a lot of the time, very progressive social enterprises, then it might be worthwhile that the council ensures that the community centres, in the absence of their business rates being charged at all, which would be the best possible outcome, could at least ensure that they benefit from this rates reduction scheme. Because as I said, I couldn't think of any venue that generally in our communities offers better social value than those.
Thank you, Councillor Galton. I think the public sometimes sound surprised when we explain that we charge ourselves 50 business rates, but only give ourselves half of it back. Who would like to come in on that point, please? Victoria, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the business rates for community centres, we don't tend to apply for reliefs. We do it for the businesses within the region. So it's not something that we would apply for ourselves to obtain those reliefs.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this third paper is to secure the proposed new public artwork in memory of David Oluwale and to give the authority the authority to enter into an agreement with the Leeds Culture Trust. So this is a project which has been in development since early 2016, when DOMA, which is the David Oluwale Memorial Association, first approached Yinka Shonibare with a proposal to create a sculpture designed to commemorate the life of David Oluwale. I'm sure members have seen some of the recent press around the new David Oluwale plaque, which the Leeds Civic Trust put in, and its theft, of course. So this report asks for approval to front fund the cost of a new public artwork up to the value of 1.83 million to be held against the capital programme contingency reserve. A full fundraising strategy to cover the costs has been agreed. However, this paper just ensures that the timelines can be met. The proposal is that the artwork will be located within the new air park, and of course will be subject to a planning application which will be submitted in late July, early August. And the ambition is that the new artwork will be unveiled in September 2023 as part of the Year of Culture. Obviously, I'll be happy to come back to Exec Board because obviously there'll be further updates with this as it moves on. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carter, please.
Yeah, no objection in principle at all. My only concern is that everyone should be aware we're underwriting the cost, which is £1.8 million. And so what I would like to have a reassurance on is that we are number one, going to do as much as we can to actively support the fundraising to make sure that it is achieved. Two, we aren't going to effectively double dip into the 2023 funding that this council has already agreed. And three, that we're going to get regular report back. By that I don't mean every alternate exec board meeting until it's actually installed, but as we go on, so we know that our efforts to ensure that the £1.8 million of public money is not required, and that the private fundraising has been effective, efficient, and properly carried out. And other than that, I haven't agreed to it.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. And I think, as Councillor Pryor said, we're very keen to bring those updates back to make everybody aware of what is happening with this. I don't know, Eve, do you want to comment on the work that's been put into fundraising, please? I think that's an important point that Councillor Carter raised.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So we're absolutely going to work hand in hand with Leeds 2023 to support them on the fundraising, Councillor Carter. So, for example, in some cases, it may be that it's appropriate for the council to be the named application, being the named organisation in applications for fundraising, depending on the advice that we receive from organisations and trusts that we apply to. So we will, of course, be doing that very closely with the Leeds 2023 team. Karen Murgatroyd, who is our partnership lead between ourselves and Leeds 2023, will keep a close eye on this on our behalf. And I will follow up on, I'll make sure that the action is followed up around keeping you all updated.
Thank you. Councillor Galton, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to formally associate the Liberal Democrat Group with support for this public artwork and the role that the council is playing in enablement, because besides the issue of the finance, of course, there's the siting of the sculpture, which will be part of the new park which is being built, which I'm sure will make it even more iconic as a new space for people to recreate, as well as to be, yeah. But I do have some reservations in the same manner as Councillor Carter, of course, but I'm sure that's shared by all of the executive board in terms of making sure that we don't have, at the end of the day, an extra bill at a time when finances are very precarious. And I just wanted to have clarity that Leeds 2023, if I read the report correctly, are involved in that fundraising. So would this form part of what their original fundraising target was, or is this something which is now added on top of the 2023 fundraising goals?
Thank you. Eve, would you like to come in, please?
Of course. So it will be included in their overall aspirations for fundraising to deliver the Year of Culture. That makes sense. So it's recognised as one of their signature events during the year. And so the fundraising that is done to be able to secure the sculpture and pay for it will be recognised as being part of the total amount that is spent on the Year of Culture. Is that clear enough?
Thank you. So I don't see anybody else wanting to come in on this item. So I will turn to the recommendations on page 60. And obviously we've noted the comments Councillor Carter made about regular updates as well in terms of the recommendations. So I take it, looking around, everybody's happy with these recommendations. So thank you, Councillor Prime. We'll move on to Councillor Hayden's papers, please, and item 9.
Thank you, Leader. My first paper is a submission of round 2 Levelling Up Fund, which is known as LUF bids. So the Levelling Up Fund is a huge opportunity for Leeds to secure very significant capital investment that will contribute to the renewal and regeneration of community facilities, transport infrastructure, green spaces and high streets in places right across the city. So as Exec Board knows, we've already secured 20 million under round 1 of the LUF funding stream for connecting West Leeds project to improve the outer ring road corridor between Pudsey and Horsforth. And the proposals for bids under round 2 illustrate our commitment to identifying and delivering opportunities in all parts of Leeds. It is important, and that's what we've sought to do, to maximise the opportunity for securing investment across Leeds through round 2, especially given that there's been no announcements about any further rounds of the Levelling Up Fund. Round 2 of the LUF was announced and opened by government at the end of March, and over the past 3 months we have worked hard. And I would just want to thank the whole team on the incredibly hard work they've done in very constrained timescales to bring forward a business case for projects to bid for up to 20 million of this capital funding or more for larger transport schemes. We raised our initial thinking on how we might respond at the Executive Board in April, and since then our proposals have developed, and the scale of Leeds and our ambition means that we are probably submitting more bids than any other local authority. Some of the projects set out in this report have been in development prior to the Levelling Up Fund, and we are taking the opportunity to bid for and hopefully secure funds that will help in their delivery. This is the case for Fernville Wellbeing Centre, or Woodley Park and Ride, and North West Leeds Employment Hub. Other projects have been quickly developed in response to the funding opportunity and to reflect locally identified priorities. We are very conscious that the time and resources available to develop these proposals has meant that in some cases, consultation and engagement with key stakeholders has not always been possible in the way we would normally allow for, given realistic leading times for project development. And this is something we would look to address with much greater involvement of local people in detailed project design as any successful bids come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. I'll add my thanks to the team as well. I know it's been a huge amount of work to put the 6 bids together. Councillor Galton, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm actually welcoming of the fact that the council is putting forward 6 bids, because I think the people of Leeds so far might wonder why certain parts of the city are enjoying direct financial intervention from the government, like Morley and the previous Levelling Up Fund successful bid in Pudsey, when they're not. So actually, this is a step up in providing equity of access to government funding. And I assume that when they are being judged as separate bids, that each will have their own respective feedback in terms of why the government did not feel that they quite fulfilled the criteria that they set this time round. As it is, there's also a great variety of projects, some like the Park and Ride scheme, the employment scheme in Leeds North West, which I'd like to point out our councillors in Otley are fully behind. and down to the Green Routes scheme, which is in the constituency that the leader and myself are councillors within. So that broad range of subject matter within these projects should ensure that we should at least hit the mark once out of these bids. And being the largest authority in the country, bar Birmingham, you would expect us to have multiple bids since we have multiple MPs. So I wish the group well in terms of our asset management team who are taking these bids forward. And I certainly do offer my wholehearted partnership between the bid going in and afterwards, in terms of whether or not the government, I assume, will request supplementary information about the bids that they are particularly interested in. And I'd like to hear about that part of the process, if there's any clarity to be had.
Thank you, Councillor Galton. Councillor Carter, please.
Yes, well, as usual, Councillor Galton gets it wrong. As regards the initial, we made two bids initially. One was at Fernville, one was Horsforth stroke Carved Farsley. It wasn't Pudsey at all.
Constituency.
To say, constituency, absolutely.
Yeah.
But now we've taken the assumption upon ourselves that this is the final round. Who knows whether it is or it isn't? But let's just suppose that it is. Then I understand that you would want to put as many bids in as possible. But you have to ask the question, is, as an authority, is there no priority? I remember, for example, the MP for East Leeds kicking off something alarming when the project in East Leeds didn't go ahead. And we were assured and told, well, we'd had some very kind words back from the department saying it was a good bid and it had to be judged against all the others. And yet now it's in here again, but it's given, as far as you're concerned, no priority. So presumably, as one of the requirements is that the councillors and the MP for the areas concerned have to support, then we would expect the councillors, actually it goes further than just East Leeds, in that area of Leeds, and the MPs, and it could in fact be more than just one MP that would benefit from that particular scheme, will be in themselves writing to support the bids. Because if we don't get the MPs supporting the bids and the local councillors supporting the bids, we're going to struggle. And I don't want to see us struggle. I want to see us to be successful in as many bids as we can be. But I do pose the question, have we put, instead of too many eggs in one basket, too many bids in altogether? And are we risking jeopardising success? And I'd like a bit of clarity on that.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. I'll ask officers to come in first and then Councillor Hayden, please. Martin would like to come in, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the opportunity is for a bid from each constituency. So that's the basis upon which the 6 have been brought forward. They're assessed in their own right. They're different schemes in terms of some of them are transport schemes, some of them are place-based schemes. So they will be assessed separately by different departments in that sense in looking at them. There's no requirement set out for a local authority to set its priorities of the bids it puts in. That doesn't stop the government asking us at a point in time, but that isn't what the clarification or the assessment criteria is as we sit here now. So each bid can go forward on its own merits for assessment.
Mr. Farrington, that's not the question. I realise the bids can go forward. You could have actually put more in if you wanted. But then if you are asked the question, does this exec board, does the council not have a view? Does Councillor Galton not have a view? What do we say then? Oh, well, it's up to you, really. And we normally say to the government, oh, you know, you should listen to what we say. So we're going to stay stum.
I think we were, Tom, would you like to come in?
I think what I would say is if the government come to us and say there's more chance of us being successful by prioritising, then we'll prioritise, and we'll have a process here where we'll consult exec board members to do that. I think in the absence of the government having any process like that, then we've done what the process has asked, as Martin has said. That would be my view.
And I think the point I would make, I'll let you come back, Councillor Carter, but the point I would make is we were allocated the priority status that indicated we could put a bid in for each constituency. I view the government clearly indicates that they want a bid from each constituency. That's what the that status indicated. We may be subject to criticism had we not done that, and that's the position that has got us here. Not every local authority had the same status within the process that we did, and I think we need to take advantage of that, as we have done with the in the 2 rounds of funding. It's not clear. I've heard ministers speak a number of times. It's not clear that there will be a 3rd round of levelling up bids open, and I think given that, to get in a bid for each constituency wholly within our boundaries is a good piece of work, and sets out our ambition and our ambition for the benefit of this to be in the whole city, and that ambition, I think, is really clear from us. I'll let Councillor Carter come back, and then
the bids have gone in. We come back to the question of when you're asked what the priorities are, do you stay stum or do you spell them out? Well, from what the chief executive says, you then spell them out. So presumably you must already know. Or are you just going to go away and think about it?
don't think we're going to answer a question we've not yet been asked, Councillor Carter. Councillor Galton, please.
Well, I think this is a pertinent point to bring up because it points out in paragraph 2 on page 77 that the constituency MPs must formally advise their priority support to submitted bids. And therefore, if we're talking about prioritisation and which ones we judge will be the ones most likely to be accepted, I would suggest that any scheme which doesn't get the prompt support of a constituency MP is necessarily putting itself in 6th position out of the schemes which are coming forward. So all I would say is I hope that all of these schemes have the support of their constituency MP, and that if they're not happy with some of the detail, that they're clarifying what it is they'd like to be included to enable their support to be achieved by the deadline of the 7th of July, because the clock is ticking, isn't it?
Would anybody else like to come in on this item, please? Councillor Hayden, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit confused. Councillor Carter said that we have no priorities, but then said we have no priority or low priority. Don't know, my age-related hearing loss might have let me down on Fernville. It's a very high priority of ours, but we haven't prioritised them yet. We haven't been asked to do so. There is a kind of priority, if you will, in how far advanced along the projects are, but in terms of and whether they fit into the criteria of our best council plan. But we haven't been asked for prioritisation. We did get very positive feedback on Fernville. I can't imagine why it wasn't given the money. in December, given that it was said to be an extremely strong bid. But we haven't had any written feedback, Councillor Galton. So unless somebody can correct me on that. So I would too like to see the government feedback on our bids and properly feedback so that we know for the future.
Great. Shall we turn to the recommendations on page 76, and noting that this report is exempt from calling because we need to meet the deadline that the government has set, and I take it everybody is happy with the recommendations, and I see nobody objecting, so we'll move on to item 10, please, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you very much. So this is the Leeds Station Sustainable Travel Gateway Scheme, and it's a project for sustainable travel project funded by a 34.9 allocation from the Department of Transport and West Yorkshire Combined Authority in the Transforming Cities Fund programme. This project represents Zone 1 of the Leeds Integrated Station Master Plan, which was endorsed by Executive Board in 2018 and forms part of the South Bank Regeneration Framework. Leeds Station was the second busiest outside London in 2020-21. That's off from the Office of Road and Rail, and passenger numbers have returned quickly, reaching pre-COVID figures in October 2021, back at 93% of pre-COVID figures, now 149% at weekends. So the master plan sets to redevelop the station so it's capable of meeting increasing passenger numbers over the next 20 years. To do this, the capacity on New Station Street for pedestrians needs to be increased. Now, I just want to note here that New Station Street belongs to Network Rail, and they have made it very clear that for security and health and safety reasons, they do not want vehicles on New Station Street. And therefore, as part of this big project to achieve this, Network Rail and DFT have confirmed that all vehicles should be removed and a secure perimeter established. The station will reach capacity this decade with increasing passenger numbers as a result of programmes such as the Transpennine route upgrade and platforms extensions enabling longer trains. The majority of the project is on Network Rail land, as I've mentioned. Network Rail has approved the designs and will be responsible for managing and maintaining the asset following the project completion. The aim of the project is to improve onward journeys for passengers, address known accessibility issues at the station, and improve passenger security. The works include the pedestrianisation of New Station Street through the reallocation of bus services to Ball Lane and taxi rank to Bishopsgate, visible from New Station Street entrance. Connectivity from the station to the surrounding area will be enhanced through the installation of steps and 2 times 21-person passenger lifts, providing step-free access to the taxi rank. A 560-space cycle hub will be built alongside 2-way segregated cycle lane on Neville Street, Dart Neville Street and Bishopgate. Environmental improvement works, including lighting upgrades and the replacement of the cladding, will take place in Neville Street and Dart Neville Street. This will include the decommissioning of the existing artwork in consultation with the original artist and creation of a frame along the eastern elevation of Neville Street, which will provide space for artwork, which Network Rail is working with local artists, will change over time. So there's a lot going on at the moment. I want to thank the general public for their patience in all the enabling works that are happening on Neville Street and Dart Neville Street and Bishopgate at the moment, and the increased traffic in that area. Network Rail require renewal works to be undertaken on the structure of New Station Street, known as Millgoyt, at the same time as the project. Planning permission and listed building consent was gained in 23rd of October 2020. Highways approval for the highways design was obtained in 13th of September 2021. So the main works are scheduled to commence in November 2022 and complete in summer 2024, subject to Network Rail confirming the design and funding of the Millgoyt deck and beams replacement. Enabling Drainage works commenced in May 2022 on Bishopgates, as I mentioned, and which will be followed by works on Neville Street in early July 2022 and Neville Street later in the year. A comprehensive communication plan was activated prior to the commencement of these works. Extensive engagement sessions have been held with the key project stakeholders, including Network Rail, Built Environment and Accessibility Panel, the Leeds AUAG, the Leeds Disabled People's Organisation, bus and taxi operators. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Carter, please.
But it isn't true to say that everybody's happy with this proposal. Would you like to report on the views of the taxi and private hire trade, and also the views of disability groups who have pointed out that 2 21-person lifts and no ramped access would mean that there'd be problems at a time when the station was at capacity, which presumably it will be, but also if one or both of the lifts malfunction. And we all know from residents who live in multi-storey flats that lifts have a horrible habit of malfunctioning, and that some disability groups have made it very clear, quite rightly, to this council that they are not at all happy with the accessibility arrangements for disabled people. I'd like an answer to that. Additionally, I do want to know the views of the private hire and taxi drivers trade, who say that the additional space that's been provided, it's giving with one hand and taking away with the other, because we've reduced the taxi rank spaces elsewhere in the city. And additionally, they draw very clear attention to Bishopgate, which they believe is unworkable as it's currently proposed, and that it will result in, at peak times or times of events, probably a dangerous number of people being on Bishopgate Street, trying to get taxis which have been limited by this council. And I'll add my own particular point here and say that, yes, and we all know what happens when there are crowds, particularly of people who've maybe had a surfeit of alcohol and who knows what else. I think you need to answer some pretty serious questions, particularly for disabled people, but also for the taxi trade and private hire trade, who will be crucial to the success of this new station arrangement. And it's all very well saying it's Network Rail, Network Rail, Network Rail. I'm sorry, we are one of the major players, major partner, Leeds City Council. So I'd like some answers, please.
It's fair to say, met the taxi and private hire trade, and they're unhappy with Network Rail's decision to remove the existing taxi rank off Network Rail's own private property decision. Network Rail have come to on the basis of security and health and safety advice. That is, we're clearly working in partnership. I'm sure officers and colleagues can come in some more detail. We're clearly working with Network Rail on development of the station and rail services to try and catch up with other parts of the country that have seen significant investment in their transport infrastructure. But coming back to the issues around the closure of the existing taxi rank, I'm quite clear, like I say, that sits in Network Rail's private property, and it is their decision around its closure that has led to some of the developments we're on. Clearly, we do want to work with everybody in the city on this, but that's the particular concern that I know is held by people. Do any officers want to come in on this point with some of the more detailed questions?
Perhaps if I touch on the disabled access points that Councillor Carter raised, Chair. I mean, we've consulted heavily in terms of the development, and they're set out in the appendix in terms of the volume of consultation that takes place. I mean, Councillor Carter rightly points out that there are some representatives on the disability access side who have concerns about the scheme, and that is correct. It's also correct that in terms of the balance of the consultation, that the Network Rail Built Environment and Accessibility Panel are supportive of the scheme. It's been endorsed by Age Friendly Leeds. The Leeds Disabled People's Organisation are supportive, as are the Carers Network. And what the scheme is doing is it's creating a car and vehicle free area outside of the front of the station. That provides advantages. And then also in terms of the existing taxi rank, the existing taxi rank has a number of deficiencies, particularly in terms of wheelchair users who have to access on the street side, not the curb side. And there's no rear access for wheelchair users either. What the new taxi rank does is it provides those facilities in a purpose-built facility that meets those requirements. So I don't think it's not a binary issue, Councillor Carter, in terms of the balance of the issues, but there's a lot to commend the scheme, and there's a lot of support for the scheme amongst a number of disability groups.
In general terms, I'm supportive, but you can't brush under the carpet concerns raised, particularly by disability groups, but also by the people who ensure the nighttime economy in particular of this city is properly served. And I'm sorry, Councillor Lewis seems to want to blame one partner being Network Rail, and I can quite see why you'd want to do that. But nevertheless, the City Council bears equal responsibility, and I want to see a better arrangement for disabled people before I give the nod to this finally. And I don't want to have to come back here in time to come and say, well, you were told. Because there's too much of that goes on already here. So I think that I want some really straight answers on the points made that I know they've been made to Councillor Lewis by the union, the private hire and taxi driver unions. I know they have, and I know they've been made very forcibly. I also had points made to me by the same organisations and also now by disability groups, and I want satisfactory answers, and so far I've not had them.
I don't think anybody's attempted to brush under the carpet the difficulties that have been caused by Network Rail's requirement that there are no vehicles on those new Station Street. We've never said it is a scheme without opposition and without challenges. But like I say, it is. You can phrase the question as many ways as you like, Councillor Carter, but that is, you know, the existing taxi rank, which I know that the trade would like to, the hackney carriage trade, obviously private hire vehicles can't use it, but hackney carriage trade would like to keep, it is not in the council's gift to maintain it because it is not on council land or the council highway network. And there is no, you know, in terms, you've asked for some straightforward answers, and I don't know how more straightforward I can be in response to that. Councillor Hayden, please.
Thank you. I mean, Martin's just listed the groups that, although they might not be wholly happy, have endorsed the scheme. And I also want to including the Carers Network, who are hugely important in terms of looking after disabled people. But just from a personal standpoint, it's those people with hidden disabilities. Negotiating leaving the station is incredibly difficult in that constrained space, especially for people with autism, who that crowded area and not knowing where to go is incredibly disorientating. This will be very clear as the pictures show in the report, and the CGI pictures that show in the report. It's going to be very clear where the taxis are, and you don't have to get a lift if you're able-bodied. There are, you know, stairs to use. So 200 people, 50 to 100 people. Many of them can use the stairs, including people with hidden disabilities and the more cognitive disabilities that people have to deal with, that we want to be able to have full accessibility to our station. Obviously, wheelchair users and other people with physical disabilities will have to use the lifts. You have to use the lift in the station as well to get to the different platforms. I know in my own ward, lifts breaking down is a huge problem. So we will seek to network rail to make sure that those two lifts will be maintained properly and that people have full accessibility to the station and the taxi rank. Thank you.
Councillor Carter.
I have never. A twofold. I'm deafening myself. Points I'm making a twofold. That the proposals for the taxi rank raises serious issues of overcrowding. That's got nothing to do with the existing taxi rank, which I quite agree is not as we want it. And the other point is that I go back to the point about disabled people, particularly in wheelchairs, that there is an issue there that is not being addressed. Now, to be frank, to say, well, it's not us, it's Network Rail. Well, come on, let's put some shoulder into this and some muscle into it. There's £24 million of government money, and these issues need sorting on what is otherwise a good scheme, which I do not in principle oppose at all. But so far, you failed to answer my questions other than to blame Network Rail. And well, that may well be correct, but only partially correct if it's correct at all. I want to see, you know, it seems to me the first thing Councillor Lewis does when he presented with a problem is just find out who we can blame first rather than himself. I want answers to this.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Again, I won't repeat the answer I've given on a number of occasions around the ownership of the existing taxi rank, which is out of our control and owned by Network Rail. In terms of the other questions, I'm looking to see if Martin, would you like to come in, please?
So, yeah, it was just in relation to the potential overcrowding that you've raised, Councillor Carter, in terms of the Bishopgate Street proposal. I mean, that design and proposal has been modelled using the appropriate methods, and that overcrowding issue hasn't been one that's come forward with the design. I mean, I'm happy to look at that. I'm happy to brief you on it, but that's the position of how the design has been arrived at.
Councillor Hayden, please.
I just want to say that you know, this council was presented with a situation in which Network Rail and the Department of Transport wanted to remove vehicles from New Station Street. Our duty and our obligation is to provide a taxi rank, an accessible taxi rank, and in a very, very constrained part of the city. And the team have worked extremely hard in very difficult circumstances to deliver that. It's not exactly how we would want it. Of course it's not, but in very constrained and difficult circumstances, this is a very accessible scheme. People can use lifts if they cannot physically walk down steps. The overcrowding around that taxi rank is terrible anyway now. So, and it has been modelled, as Martin says, to make sure that the new one, passes any legal requirements we have. But it's been extremely difficult for the team, and they've done an incredible job under very difficult circumstances.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Does anybody else want to come in on this? Martin, please.
I mean, just in terms of, there's been a huge depth of different designs and iterations that have been undertaken in terms of the taxi rank, access ramps, whether they can work or not, the stairs, the lifts and the configurations. So if it's helpful to Councillor Carter to go through that level of work, then we're very happy to do it.
Thank you for that offer. Does anybody else want to come in on this item? Okay, I shall move to the recommendations on page 95 and see if the board is happy with those recommendations. You can see Councillor Carter is reserving his position. Is everybody else happy? It's great. Thank you, Councillor Hayden, and we'll move on to Councillor Cooper's items, please, and item 11.
Thank you, Leader. The first of my papers today is a paper that is proposing a new social value fund in the city. So the proposal involves us charging suppliers and tenderers an annual fee that could be used to contribute to social value in Leeds, if approved. It's expected that it could generate £500,000 and upwards in future years. There are to be 3 levels of fee, and with the number of employees an organisation has as the criteria for which fee level they will pay at, the maximum being 1,250 for an organisation employing 250 or more employees. Of course, we will not be charging third sector or public sector, or indeed any organisations with less than 10 employees in the city. We expect that we'll be able to develop this fund and allocate the funding by an advisory panel that will consist of elected members, officers and third sector representatives who could quickly establish recommendations around how that fund would be deployed. There's a lot of detail in the report, but some consultation has taken place with organisations that we already tender and who supply us, and also the third sector, and it's been very positively endorsed by them so far. So I'll leave it there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Carter, please.
So it's a tax on the private sector for a particular purpose, and I don't have any difficulty at all with attempting to raise more money for charitable purposes, but nevertheless it's a tax, one that some companies can opt out of reading the paper, but nevertheless it's a tax. And I know you exclude public sector bodies. Well, why would you do that and just focus on private sector companies? And I don't know who dreamt this up, but there must be much better ways of raising this amount of money through the council for good causes. And to be frank, the prospect of yet another body of hand-picked councillors and friends from other sectors who will do as they are told because you probably fund them anyway is not an acceptable way of progressing, Councillor Cooper. And I think you should take this paper away, think about it again and bring it back in a much more in a light that encourages the private sector in a difficult time. It's absolutely no good deciding one sector is suffering the most. Most sectors at the moment are suffering in one way or another. And it's a very bad time to have brought it forward. Very bad time. But if you were to take it away, think about it, use some common sense and come back with a better proposal. I'm sure but this is nothing more than a stealthy way of screwing money out of suppliers. And you may say it's a very small amount of money. Indeed, it is a very small amount of money, but it's the principle. And interesting enough, someone said to me, and of course, it could raise more than that. And I thought, here we go again. Here we are. Sorry. I'll finish there.
Councillor Galton, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm in the danger of sounding like Councillor Carter a little bit in this one, which is regrettable when it's a paper that talks about social value and trying to raise money for deserving causes. But I really do think the council needs to think again about this particular initiative. I and several other councillors are on the Lord Mayor's charity appeal. That is meant to be the civic fundraising drive that we have every single year to highlight an individual third sector organisation within the city that does great work and that we hope to put on an even more sustainable footing by greater money to be spent, but also a greater understanding from the Leeds citizens. The Children's Services also has its own fundraising outfit as well, which hopes to talk to corporate organisations to make sure that the children in our city also get some support that they might not otherwise have. And this would be indirect competition with both of those, because there's a danger that the corporate world out there will think, well, I'm already paying through the nose through this social value fund, so why should I give you even more for any of these two very deserving fundraising aspects for the Lord Mayor or for children in the city? So I would really appreciate if this was taken away and rethought, and perhaps the model which is suggested could be used as a more sustainable basis for consistent funding of things like the Lord Mayor's appeal and the Children's Services charities. So it came out of the blue. I suggest it goes back and comes back, singing like Rainbow, so that we can all go, what a fantastic initiative that isn't undermining other initiatives that have been around a lot longer.
Thank you, Councillor Gort. Neil, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, I suppose this comes back to this issue of what we're trying to do around social value with our contracts. And we have an obligation, which the Executive Board signed up to, about trying to derive social value from our procurements. And we do a lot already with those in terms of driving, training, employment. But what those have tended to concentrate on is organisations where we have contracts over £100,000. And the reality of it is, because we have around about 1,500 contractors and hundreds of procurements going through, we don't have the opportunity to negotiate individual social value benefits for those small contracts. So what this is trying to do is try to recognise that, do something which is proportionate to the size of those contracts, and provide a very simple way in which we can capture some social value from those companies, and those companies can actually get something from that in terms of actually acknowledgement of their contribution to social value within the city, rather than each individual contract being negotiated, which would take their time and take our time. And through a very modest charge, which is set out there, because of the volume of contracts which we have and the volume of procurements that we do, it turns out to be a pretty tidy sum with which we can do useful things. So I think it is a very innovative, but I think a very convenient way, which works for both parties to deliver social value to the city.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you. And I'd just like to add to what Neil said about our all ready, or the obligation that is on organisations that contract with us to deliver social value. This is in addition to those requirements, and it is a minimal annual fee in terms of money, but that could deliver some extra social value to this city. We are often being asked by organisations that we work with how they can add value to what we want to be done in the city, and often they would pre-COVID often come out and help build things, paint fences, have corporate days where organisations would come out and assist you know, in tackling inequality and poverty in the city. And this is because of COVID, they haven't been able to undertake any of that good work over a number of years now. And so we did float the idea that of a small annual fee, if they would if we required that, would they feel that that in some way would help them with their social value and what they give? And many organisations do have their own requirements as well on the amount of social value that they deliver to the area that they are working in themselves, and indeed the local residents. And like I said, we have consulted with many of them, and it was received really positively. So I don't accept some of the comments that have been raised by either Councillor Carter or Councillor Galton, and to say paying through the nose for an organisation which is an annual fee, you know, in the maximum of £1,250 for an organisation that employs 250 employees is not correct, Councillor Galton, I don't say so.
Councillor Carter, please.
I'm not sure it's even legal what you're proposing. I mean, you refer to it as a fee. So now we charge a fee to the suppliers of the council. They have an opt out. I accept that. But of course, the sneaky feeling is that once you say we'll have the opt out, where the hell does your chance of getting business from the council go? And as you have rightly said, Councillor Cooper, already most of the organisations that we are dealing with, in fact, a very large number, already have social responsibilities within their company framework to ensure that they do support in all sorts of ways. And in many cases, a lot more than this already. So what is the point other than the city? And I don't particularly like to agree with Councillor Galton, but I do on this occasion. You know, we have the Lord Mayor's charity, we have children's charities, we have things that all sorts of organisations within the council sponsors. And this seems to me, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, Mr. Evans. And this might be a good intention, and I accept what you say, but it is the road to hell. And it is crass, to say the least. It endangers what companies already give. It endangers their corporate responsibility. It endangers, and you might laugh and say it's a small amount of money. It is now, but we all know, don't we? And this simply won't do. It's badly thought out, badly dreamed up, and I'm astonished you brought it. And I think if you'd have had the sense to have discussions with other group leaders, you would have found we could have got our heads together and come up with a way of resolving this without this cack-handed effort.
Councillor Cooper, please.
I'd just like to say it's, you know, I am disappointed by the comments that we've received today from both the leaders of the Conservative group and the Liberal Democrat group in an attempt for us to build a social value fund that would help to tackle poverty and inequality in this city. You know, we are proposing to agree the way that that's allocated across party and across organisations in the city. And I just think that their opposition to this paper is completely unfounded. And I would ask Exec Board members to support this paper to allow us to do some extremely good work in the city through organisations that already contract with us or in the future wish to contract with us. When they apply for any tenders, they will know straight away that part of that process will be the small annual fee towards our social value fund. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Galton, please.
Thanks, Chair. Once again, Councillor Cooper has difficulty listening sometimes. No one is objecting to the idea of creating social value. No one is opposing the council talking to the people that it has procurement contracts with to better understand how they might want to contribute to that social value. What we're saying is that the council already has some very established vehicles for enabling corporate entities to do that. And if the council was thinking of setting up such a funding mechanism to create a capacity, a greater financial capacity of £500,000 to spend in this city, I would suggest that the models which have been developed within its own children's services department and within its own First Citizens office are tried and tested avenues for spending some of that social value that you're hoping to generate. And I think the suspicion is this issue about setting up a new advisory panel which can then act as judge and jury on bids that come forward to it and splash out money in that manner. Whereas actually, I think those people that you're talking to, that you procure from, would be very happy for a significant proportion of this money to be directly associated without debate towards those fundraising opportunities from children's services and from the Lord Mayor. But unfortunately, that conversation has not been had. And that's why I'm saying take it away and then come back, and then we might find that there's a better way to spend the money that you're hoping to raise than simply creating another slush fund.
I'm not prepared to come back.
So I'm going to turn to the recommendations on. I'm going to turn to the recommendations on page 155 and see whether, after that discussion, if the board is happy with those proposals.
No.
So Councillor Carter and Councillor Galton are not in favour. I've just heard them say yes, yes, yes. So take it, Councillor.
Yes, well, there we go.
So we're all happy with it, and Stadler and Waldorf over there aren't. Great. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 12. Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Leader. And my next paper is the financial outturn for the year ending 31st of March 2022. And first of all, before I go into any detail at all, I would just like to put on record my thanks to Victoria and her team for the remarkable work that's been undertaken by her and her department in such a difficult and challenging year. You know, not knowing what's coming at us next, I have to say, in terms of COVID, inflation, and a number of other fronts as well. So I just want to, you know, make sure that our thanks go quite loudly to Victoria and her team. Will you please take them back to the team on behalf of Executive Board, Victoria, for the work that's been undertaken, like I said, in very difficult and challenging times. The report and its appendices go into a great amount of detail, and I don't propose to go through all that detail at all. I know that Exec Board members will have read their papers and picked up on the points that maybe that they want to pick up on. The outturn really has been that we have a underspend of £1.5 million on the revenue budget, which is remarkable, as I've said, given the ups and downs in this year's finances, I've got to say. Like I said, there is a lot of detail in the report on each area and how each area is either overspent or underspent, and how that's been mitigated through the finances. So I shall leave it there, Chair, and wait for questions, which undoubtedly will come from Councillor Carter and Councillor Galton.
Well, actually,
Thank you. Councillor Carter, please.
A mind reader you aren't. Just a couple of questions because we're looking backwards here. We're looking at last year. I'll just start by adding my thanks to Victoria and her team. It's been a difficult year for all of them in all sorts of ways, as with the rest of us in many ways, and it's a creditable outcome, notwithstanding the fact that, of course, the 1.5 million underspend would not be there had we not used the COVID reserve of 24 million. We'd have been looking at a very different situation. So, as I say, we are looking backwards, lessons to be learnt. We've discussed them before. One particular question. We have put into our estimates for the coming year a pay rise. If that pay rise rises by 2%, how much would that cost the local authority?
Thank you. Victoria, please.
Thank you, Chair. For every 1% in pay rise above what we've budgeted for would be estimated at 4 million. So a 2% pay rise would be 8 million. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comments on this paper? Councillor Galton, please.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Cooper knows that there's been some conjecture as to whether it was reasonable for some of the overspends within budgets to be classified as COVID related. And as Councillor Carter said, that's in the past now. But going forward, I understand that the financial reporting will not allow for COVID related excuses. And that means that there is a greater risk for the authority because there will no longer be any more government COVID related aid, and they certainly won't be giving us any money out of the goodness of their heart because that's not the nature of the regime, is it? And we will have potentially the pressure of a higher wage settlement for our public workers. So my question really is, there are several initiatives which were meant to take place in terms of system reviews in several of the departments, and they have been attempted year on year, and each year an excuse comes up. And of course, the most used excuse of late has been, it's COVID. How can we have any greater assurance that those systems reviews that have been delayed are actually going to come through this year at a time when the council will be more financially exposed? What things are in place to make sure that it happens within departments?
I'll bring Victorian, but I do think nearly 2-year pandemic where we had over 18 months of unprecedented government restrictions, and we know over 2,100 people sadly died in Leeds Council. Galton is hardly an excuse. Yeah. I do want to pull you up on the use of that word and minimising the impact of COVID. I don't think it's appropriate. Victoria, please.
Thank you, Chair. When the budget was set in February, there was a number of action plans that at that time we felt we would be achievable. So, however, during that period, there's been substantial change to the economy, which may have an impact on the delivery of some of those proposals. What we are doing is on a monthly basis, we'll be reporting to Executive Board on those action plans and the deliverability of them. Where pressures are identified, they will come here with mitigating action on how we'll manage them throughout the year. And then those actions will be reviewed for going forward. So it's quite a robust process that we go through around the delivery of the savings proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of additional points. I think there's no doubt that the government, did provide help during the pandemic to local government and to us particularly to get through without our finances, being in even more severe position. And that was very welcome. I think the position we're in now is that the NHS has been given significant resources to deal with the backlog directly caused by the pandemic, but local government has not been in the same position. And so we are still going to be dealing with the implications of COVID this year and over the next 2-3 years. We have backlogs ourselves, but we don't have the additional resources to deal with that. Now, we're having dialogue with the government about that, about the issue of energy costs and inflationary pressures, about the issue of workforce that Councillor Carter raised, and whether pay rises can be funded. But the whole, the result of all of that will hopefully get, support from government in some way to recognise that, particularly on the social care side where the demand pressures are highest. But the corollary of all that is that I can absolutely assure you that the review, every bit of the organisation is going to have to look at serious reviews, because the financial position that is facing us in the next year and to 3 years is as significant as I've known it in the time I've been here. So those reviews will be absolutely taken extremely seriously, and we'll have to deliver on them as well.
Thank you, Tom. Does anybody else want to come in on this item? Great. I'll turn to the recommendations on page 169, and I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. Thank you. We'll move on to item 13, please, Councillor Cooper.
Thanks, Leader. And I think happy might be a stretch of a description for some of our colleagues on Exec Board today, but nevertheless, we will continue. The next paper on my portfolio is the Treasury Management Outturn for the financial year ended 31st of March 2022. Obviously, the purpose of this report is to inform Exec Board of the final outturn for Treasury management performance in that year. And the net debt in the year has reduced within that year as well. So I'm pleased to be able to report that, and that we've reported savings against the budget of £4.18 million. But I'll leave it there for questions, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Would you like to come in, Councillor Carter?
Yes, could Victoria explain why that saving came about, and explain the possible implications of, I realise the council is now the finance department quite astutely is looking to move to long-term borrowing and balancing it with short-term, and I understand the reasons why, but I would like an explanation on why it unexpectedly dropped, and secondly, what the impact of further rate increases are likely to be, if you would like to have a guess. Finger in the air.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Victoria, please.
The actual borrowing is reduced this year because the capital programme was reduced. The reason for that was that obviously we've been through the pandemic, and the delivery of some of those capital schemes was challenging throughout the year. So that's one reason why the level of borrowing is less. The other is also around the underspend is due to us undertaking less borrowing, but also around securing some of the interest rates on the long-term borrowing. So there were certain points throughout the year when the interest rates dropped and we secured borrowing on the long term at that basis. We're now in a position where we haven't got any short-term borrowing, it's all on the long. So that's fixed that pricing for us, which has given us some security and sustainability over the next few years. However, any new borrowing, as we know, interest rates are increasing, and we've had 5 consecutive increases. So we're now at 1.25%. That impacts on both the short term and the longer term rates that we can secure at. I haven't got the figure actually around what we're forecasting around interest rates, but we have put in 3.4% in the budget to cover any future borrowing. But obviously, we don't know at what level that will end up at, but we do still monitor it and will lock in when we think that there's good value.
Thank you, Victor. Yeah, Councillor Card.
So as the saving was really largely incurred through slippage, if that slippage is caught up in the current financial year, then those savings will be reversed, will they? If we spend according to our budget.
The budget's built in, so even though it's a saving this year, it's a one-off saving. So ongoing next year, if we do undertake the capital programme, the budget's already in place for that borrowing.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. I don't see anybody else wanted to speak on this item, so I'll move to the recommendation to note the report, and I take it everybody's happy with that. Thank you, Councillor Cooper, and we move on to Councillor Venner's paper, please, number 14.
Thank you, Leader. It gives me immense pleasure to be able to introduce such a positive report to Exec Board. As you will all be aware, we maintained our outstanding Ofsted judgment. We received outstanding for support to look after children and care leavers, the impact of management and leadership. We achieved good for children in need of help and protection, and outstanding for overall effectiveness. This is an incredible achievement coming out of a global pandemic with unprecedented demand on children's social work. We remain the only core city to hold an outstanding rating. And in the feedback meeting, Ofsted verbally fed back to us that we should be very proud, as it's difficult to maintain outstanding, and especially in the current context. When you are an outstanding authority, you usually get a brief inspection. However, because of the concerns identified in the focused Ofsted visit to the front door in July 21, we received a full ILACS inspection of 3 weeks. In the verbal feedback, the inspectors said this meant we could be absolutely assured that we had received a thorough inspection. They looked at around 500 cases. They interviewed around 150 social workers and other practitioners in coming to the outstanding judgment. A key element of being a good or outstanding authority is knowing yourself well and being open and transparent. When we met with the Ofsted inspectors, Tom, Sal and I were very open about the challenges facing the department and the areas which need to improve, such as higher caseloads than we would want, which reflects a national challenge in recruiting children's social workers. After a very thorough inspection, Ofsted did not find any issues of significant concern with the safeguarding of children in Leeds, which is obviously our top priority. They found outstanding restorative practice, which is thoroughly and authentically embedded, and positive and collaborative partnership working on the ground with our partners, including health and education, and a department with a genuine commitment to learning, reflection and development. The report particularly refers to every single area of concern from the focused visit last July having improved. It is also noteworthy that whenever the report highlights an area in need of improvement, it also immediately notes that we are on it. As I've already referred to, we know caseloads are higher than we would want. This is a national issue with a shortage of social workers, and the vacancies we experience are resulting in increased workload and higher caseloads. We've implemented a detailed recruitment and retention plan, and of course, this judgment will help us attract staff and is part of our recruitment strategy. What we are not in Leeds is complacent. We know staff are under immense pressure with unprecedented demand. Outstanding does not mean perfection, and even an outstanding judgment report outlines areas to work on. The senior leadership team will develop an improvement plan based on the current inspection. Scrutiny is positively referred to in the report for its robustness, and we will look forward to working with Children's Scrutiny on implementing our improvement plan. Children in need of help and protection is the only area which has moved from outstanding in 2018 to good in 2022. The reasons for this include that there was a period when the timeliness of child protection conferences was not good enough because we did not have enough child protection chairs and admin support. The Recovery Board, a cross-council board, which was put in place following the focus visit last July, in which I chaired, rapidly addressed this. Actions taken included thorough, extensive admin recruitment, and the Ofsted report refers to this now being resolved. And the judgment in this area is good. If Ofsted had any significant concerns in the domain of children in need of help and protection, we would not have received a judgment of good and a judgment of outstanding for overall effectiveness. The support of looked after children and care leavers has improved from good in 2018 to outstanding in 2022. And I have to say, this is probably the part of the report I'm most proud of. It was so wonderful to read about the skill of our dedicated foster carers, the stability of placements, the fact that children's cultural needs are recognised. And I was really pleased to see our work with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children referenced. It is also positive that the fact that our children matter to us, their voices are strong, and they genuinely feel they can make a difference, but our voice and influence work came across so strongly in the report. Sal Tariq is an inspiring leader, and it is wonderful to see his authenticity reflected in the report, along with the restorative practice, which is referred to as being thoroughly embedded and permeable through the department. My favourite line of the report, which I've read many times, is children benefit from consistently strong and creative social work delivered to an exceptionally high standard. This was also a line highlighted by Yvette Stanley, Chief Inspector of Ofsted, in her congratulatory letter, which you've seen in the report. This report is a testimony to our truly outstanding staff who have given their hearts and souls to the children of this city during a time of global crisis. I hope everyone who contributes to the following discussion will take time to thank our staff who've delivered this outstanding judgment in the face of huge challenges in a demanding climate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Venner. Councillor Carter, please.
Yes, and the staff should be very proud of their input into the Ofsted, which I know was extremely thorough and came on the back of the late summer inspection, which highlighted things that certainly concerned me. And I was very pleased when they came back with a full inspection. And I have to say, I'm very pleased that we've got this report, but I particularly was I suppose, quite grateful for the comments that the executive member made about not being complacent. Because anybody who's bothered to read the horrific report that came out on Oldham this week and has bothered to look back only a matter of a few years ago when they got a good report, not an outstanding one, but a good one, and now to see what they have, what has happened to them, realizes there can be no complacency, because as we sit here, there will be young people at risk outside of the Civic Hall boundaries that we know nothing about. And we need, with some humility, to accept that that is the case. And however good, and it is good, the Ofsted report is, that is also the case. There are young people at risk out there. And one of the reasons that it's become a national issue, that it is becoming and will become more, is that more and more is coming to light about the fact that children are being abused in one way or another across the country, and particularly in larger cities, and we ain't scratching the surface. So we need to be vigilant. We need to make sure we do what we can to put the resources in place. So does the government. And I welcome some of the inquiries that are being set up nationally now, because it's gone on too long. It's gone on for 25 years, more than that, with the situation getting worse, not better. So yes, you're right to be pleased and proud with the judgment, but you're equally right to admit that we cannot be complacent, or we will find it comes back to bite us. I would like to ask one specific question, and that relates to a habit that started when Bradford got its dreadful judgments, and they put in place recruitment policies, which I think some of us found quite disturbing. And we lost social workers, particularly in children's services. Is that now rectified? That's an answer I would really like.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. I'll bring Tom in and then I'll bring Julie in. Thank you. Tom, please.
Yeah, Julie might want to answer the question from Councillor Carter. We are making great efforts to recruit with some success, but there is still big challenges in that area. And in fact, I'm doing an online session to attract new social workers tonight. I just wanted to, I thought Councillor Venner summed it up absolutely brilliantly, and I just wanted to add my thanks to the team and to Sal in particular, Julie and her colleagues. And I always think about it a bit like there's a family of social workers who are right at the front line of all of this, who deal with incredibly difficult judgments on a daily basis. And then there's a sort of extended family of support that they're supported by in the wider, early years provision, and the schools, the partners in the city, the police, the charities we work with, and the rest of the organisation as well, who are trying our best to free up social workers to do social work, which is the best way I can describe it. With all that comes with dealing with the issues that we've flagged. We're absolutely not complacent, and the reason I think we've withstood what was without doubt a storm of the pandemic, and together with the workforce and challenges that we've had to deal with, and the financial challenges we've had to deal with in the council, is you fall back on the culture that you create in an organisation. And all the leader, myself and Councillor Venner have been out and about quite a lot to meet a lot of the staff. And when you meet them, you can see why we've got the judgment that we've got, despite probably the external factors that were hitting us at the time. And you need to continue, back in the staff to do that. I was in Gipton this morning at one of our early years settings, and just talking to the brilliant colleagues there and listening to their stories about what they had to do during the pandemic, and the issues of how you get people from North Gipton to come to somewhere in South Gipton and work with people in Osmanthorpe. And, that also brought through to me how what we've stuck with over the years, thanks to the decisions that have been making over a long period, in terms of that very community-based and neighbourhood-based support through those children's centres and early years settings, is what has also made the difference. So yeah, just massive thank you to the teams who are involved in that, and some good decisions that have been made over the last 10 years.
Thank you. Julie, would you like to come in, please?
Yes, I'm happy to come in just in relation to the specific point around social work recruitment. It is a national challenge at the moment, it has to be said. I think, as Tom has just said, the culture of the organisation is absolutely central to that, both in terms of recruiting social workers, but also retaining our social workers and staff right across the Children and Families Directorate for that matter. We're doing a lot of work. Our whole culture is about restorative approaches, and that's about having the right conversation. We're having those live conversations with our staff in terms of retention, in terms of our broader offer around staff wellbeing, around workforce development. I think the other thing, I suppose I would want to say is there is absolutely no room for complacency. And, I think the report highlighted the number of staff that we have who have worked their whole career in Leeds and remained in Leeds. And I have no doubt that is about the culture, and that's about the values. And at its heart is that absolute commitment to continuous improvement, but also to innovation. and we've got to keep abreast of our communities, our families and their needs, to know our children, to know our families, to know our communities, and to innovate constantly with our partners, with colleagues right across the council, to ensure that we are able to meet their needs. So I can assure you, within the course of the inspection, immediately after the inspection, we were having conversations about, so what's Child Friendly Leeds 3 look like? Where are the areas? We've got areas, recommendations where we need to improve. How do we take this further, ultimately to get the very best outcomes for children and families? And I would also like to say thank you to our staff at every level of the organisation, colleagues across the council and our partners, for their value base and for their commitment and dedication to children and families in this city.
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Galton, please.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, this is a celebratory time to get outstanding as a particular achievement. To retain outstanding is a singular one. And I will fulfil what Councillor Venner reminded us to do, and that is to congratulate the staff who delivered that result. And of course, we also need to congratulate the political leadership, because it has been very consistent from Councillor Venner, and we've had several fights over aspects of it over those years, but her consistency is not in dispute. I'm not a football fan, but I know that we've recently had a transfer season. I think that's what it's called. And I think the point there was that where a team is identified as being outstanding, then sometimes some of their chief practitioners tend to want to get poached by other people that want to achieve the same level of outstanding. So I can appreciate that there might be a risk element as well to our outstanding status, in that some of our professionals might be being sought from other areas. So of course, I depend on Councillor Venner to make sure they still feel loved, which I'm sure is part of the result. And another positive aspect, I suppose, is that having had the reaffirmation of the outstanding status, it means that perhaps there might be some greater thinking space to come away from the places where we know we're assuredly good in children's social care, and perhaps have a little bit more time to focus on some of those other areas that Tom Reardon was talking about earlier, which are early years based children's centres, where we've made a big commitment to keeping the ones that we've got, and now we can perhaps spend some time making sure that their performance can be as outstanding as other aspects of children's services as well. So I look forward to that happening over this year, now that the space is there to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Galton. I won't ask Councillor Venner to join in the football chat that you've introduced. But I do think it's fair to say, I mean, we're very much focused on our children's social care, the subject of the ILACS inspection. But over the recent years, we've had a really strong partnership with the Department for Education, where they've recognised the strength of the work we've done in Leeds, and we've had that partnership around current and former practitioners and senior practitioners supporting other councils to get to the position of our strength. So being a football fan, I didn't quite understand what you were saying. Yes, exactly. We do have a but it is, our strength is recognising and supporting other councils, and we do loan people out, as you say, to try and develop other councils, given the, like I say, the national recognition we get of the strength of our work. Councillor Venner, do you want to, before we move the recommendations, do you just want to sum up? Before I ask Councillor Venner, I would add again my thanks to the staff as well. Oh, sorry, Councillor Carter would like to come in.
Without going into any details, when are we going to be updated as leaders on the specific issue that was raised at the special scrutiny meeting? I only need someone to tell me when we are going to be. I'm sure Councillor Venner must know.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Venner.
Yes, so I'll start with that. So there's going to be a report of the RAG group that's chaired by Jasvinder, our independent children's safeguarding chair, which will be going back to children's scrutiny they'll be going back to children's scrutiny with the report. We haven't got the timing of that yet. I don't know which scrutiny meeting it will be going to, but it will be in the next few months. In terms of my summing up comments, Councillor Carter referred to the focus visit of 2021, and as I outlined in my comments, all the concerns from 2021 were addressed and all areas improved. And that is such a testimony to Sal and Julie and the team to have made those improvements in the context we've been in, because the challenge of keeping outstanding, you don't get to keep outstanding if you're just at the same level you were at last time they came in. You have to demonstrate how you've further improved and further innovated. And to do that in the context of a global pandemic is incredible. But as I said, outstanding does not mean perfection. And we know it does not mean we get it right every time for every child. And as Councillor Carter said, you can never, ever be complacent in children's services. Leeds does have a very comprehensive and innovative early help programme, and that is a real cornerstone of our protection of children and supporting families early in the life of a problem. And Councillor Carter referred to national reports at the moment, and we've had the national panel report, which is the report into the tragic deaths of Star Hobson and Arthur Lavinia Hughes. We've also had the national review of children's social care led by Josh McAllister. Really interestingly, a lot of the recommendations in that report are Leeds practice. So that report really focuses on the need for early help and prevention, family group conferencing, keeping children out of care wherever it's safe to do so. So it's really interesting that, his report does recommend a lot of what we're doing anyway. The staff are amazing, and it's very positive in the climate we're in to receive a report that's so positive about social work and social work practice, because the rhetoric around where social workers are deemed to have failed children doesn't keep children safe. It has the opposite impact because it stops people wanting to be children's social workers. So it's really positive to have a report that is so praising of social work practice. And it's really heartwarming that people feel proud to work for Leeds. And as Julie said, we have a lot of very long-term staff, including Sal himself, who's been here, I think, since the 90s. And a real key part of our staff retention is that pride that people have working for Leeds and the love people have for their work. And Ofsted mainly see frontline staff. They don't spend much time with senior staff or politicians at all. I met them just for about an hour in the very first week. They start at the front door where referrals come in and they follow cases through, and it is overwhelmingly frontline staff that they see. So this is very much their result. And it's down to the genuine relationships they have with children and families, which comes across so strongly in the report. So I would want to end my summing up comments as I ended my introductory comments by just genuine, heartfelt thanks to our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Venner. And we'll move on to the last item today, which is item 15, please, Councillor Rafiq.
Yeah, the report is about the new strategy for housing in Leeds for the period 2022 to 2027. The new strategy builds on the previous housing strategy and sets out the city's ambition for housing, as well as detailing how the city will work together to meet the ambitions over the next 5 years. Since the last housing strategy was introduced back in 2016, we've seen an evolution in the city's overarching strategic aims. The three pillars recognise the big challenges the city faces, and the new housing strategy has been developed to reference and complement these goals. There are many similarities to the old strategy, long-term challenges that will take time to tackle. There remains a need for more, particularly affordable housing in Leeds, a situation which is reflected nationally. The demand for social housing remains high. More people want to access services provided by the council and its partners across the city. The report states we must work effectively with these partners to deliver positive outcomes for everyone. Like other cities, we are seeing a demographic change, and we have, hay fever kicks in at the wrong time. So, like other cities, we're seeing a demographic change, and we have a higher number of older people, which is seeing a growth in demand for care services. That to reflect these, the strategy, like the previous one, is built around 6 key themes. That's meeting affordable housing needs, improving housing quality, reducing homelessness and rough sleeping, thriving and inclusive communities, improving health through housing, and finally, child and age-friendly housing. The strategy will help to guide the housing sector and the many services and the communities it affects across the whole of Leeds to deliver the outcomes that will help to Leeds to meet its best city ambition and improve the lives of its citizens. I'll stop there and happy to take any comments on this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Rafiq. Councillor Carter, please.
Very, very briefly, it's difficult to argue with what's in front of us, but a couple of points. First of all, can we this time measure the success of what we're spelling out here as the important pillars of our policy? Because it appears to me that if we've had a previous 5-year policy, which we haven't really assessed what parts of it have been highly successful, what parts of it have been moderately successful, and what parts of it have failed altogether. I used to know a country that was once run like that, and now we have another 5-year plan. So difficult to argue, but I do want to see some proper measurement of success. And the other point is this. So it's all very well saying things about space, about properties and adaptations of properties and properties being built with particular age groups in mind. If then the planning department don't buy into it or decide to trim around the edges, and a lot of it comes down to what actually gets passed at the planning committees and then goes on to be built. And some of the things don't have, to my mind, enough safeguards for disabled people, child-friendly, have properly maintained play spaces and public open spaces around developments. The developers seek every way round in some cases to get out of those obligations. I remember not so long ago being at a planning inquiry for the site allocations plan. And some of the issues we discussed, in fact, were around standards and standards that have been nationally set, and where the Federation of National House Builders Federation had already gone nationally opposing a lot of these standards the government had set and lost. We then built them into our guidance, and they came and did the same thing again and lost again. What a great waste of time. But that's still no good if we don't ensure those improvements are actually implemented in the planning conditions. And I appreciate that's not your portfolio, but it actually links in very closely indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Golden, please.
Thanks, Chair. I welcome the strategy primarily because it does have little detail and works in the form of principles and broad brushstrokes. But as far as someone like me is concerned, that's quite useful in terms of holding the council to account in its strategic role for housing. So, for instance, if I take you to page 276, and it talks about the 3 pillars and how the housing strategy will help deliver the council to deliver those 3 pillars. And in inclusive growth area, it talks about building more affordable homes of the right type and location. And next to it, supporting strategic placemaking principles, ensuring that housing contributes to the creation of local neighbourhoods. One of the key failures of this council over the past couple of decades is that it has not enabled the delivery of social housing evenly across all of the diverse communities in this city. And it measures its success solely on a Leeds level. And unfortunately, that creates shortages of certain housing types. And one of the things I'd like to see coming out of this housing strategy is a commitment from the administration to look at making sure that those shortages of affordable housing in areas like mine and others are addressed, even if it's a long-term strategy. We'd just like to be addressed in some format. And in so doing, I would suggest it would create more sustainable communities, because family networks would be sustained, and people with disabilities, for instance, who are young and single, wouldn't be told, well, you can't live where you've grown up, you've got to move into the city centre now, because that's the only place where this kind of accommodation is. We really do need to develop that up on the back of this housing strategy, so I welcome it.
Councillor Gorton, I was very excited to visit a scheme that does just that in not your ward, but ours in Robin Hood ward recently. So clearly the work is underway. Councillor Rafiq, please.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, there's not much I disagree with. I think we've had input from all our partners, scrutining everybody, and the strategy is pretty much, I think, kept very simple, straightforward. And you're quite right. There's got to be a built-in success indicators. Councillor Galton, I think all the work we're doing around, which some of it falls under Councillor Hayden's portfolio, which is housing growth, is around consulting local communities and make sure everybody's on board, including our partners, as we go forward and create sustainable communities. So I think, all in all, we are very optimistic. Some of the work we're already doing in terms of some of the challenges faced, for instance, climate change. We've got a huge capital program which kind of is already addressing those challenges. And properties or high-rise blocks, even like the highways, which aren't fit for purpose. We're not saying, well, we need to kind of repair those or kind of paper over the cracks, but we need to kind of take them down and have a proper fit for purpose housing for our residents. So that's where we're going with it. And then Councillor Lewis has mentioned about the extra care housing, which again I think we as a city we're doing well, and we've got a target to create 500 in the next few years, and we're kind of well on our way to doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Rafiq. James Rogers would like to come in, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, just to add to what Councillor Rafiq just said and respond to some of the comments made. So just in terms of the targets and the outcomes comment, which Councillor Carter made, which I think is an important one. What we've done within the strategy is for each theme, we've got a number of target outcomes that are specified within the strategy. Some of those are specific. So you'll see, for example, on page 285, it refers to one of the outcomes being to deliver 800 new affordable homes. Others are maybe less specific. And what you need to do is see this report alongside the performance reporting that we do. We've also got a new Leeds Housing Strategy Board that we've put in place, which has got cross-party representation on. And that board will take a responsibility for where we actually need to develop more specific targets where they haven't been developed yet, because it is a strategic framework to guide the work over the course of the next 5 years. And then the final point I just want to make is just to emphasise, which it does in the report, that this is very much a partnership approach. So on some of the issues that have been referenced in terms of planning and affordable homes provision, we work very closely with colleagues in City Development Martin and others. We've got a housing growth and affordable homes board, which oversees that work, and we will collectively respond to the challenges that we have.
Thank you, James. I'll turn to the recommendations on page 267. See everybody's happy with those recommendations. Thank you, Councillor Rafiq.